While I am looking forward to the Senate hearings and then reviewing the opinions of people I respect, these canards need to be debunked now.
4 days before the signing of the agreement in Vienna, has rallies presided over by the president, the so-called moderate president of Iran, in which they call the crowds chant, "Death to Israel," burned Israeli flags. A few days before the signing of the agreement, Iran says that the destruction of Israel is non-negotiable.
The clear implication is that these rallies somehow relate to the agreement, and that is a deception.
Iran can still be a place where thousands chant about the deaths of America or Israel or Britain. This was Tehran last Friday on a march supporting Palestinian rights in Jerusalem.
Please note that this was a march supporting Palestinian rights in Jerusalem. Also, be reminded that the rights of the Palestinians are at the forefront in virtually every dispute in the Middle East.
The core issue is Palestine. So definitely the trend of fanatism or extremism cannot stop at any point before we really look seriously at the Palestinian issue.
Death to America, death to Israel. That will remain the chant until this wound is healed.
Instead of having instant inspections, say within 24 hours, Iran has 24 days to open up suspect sites. 24 days. Imagine giving a drug dealer 24 days.
You gotta wonder how exactly this stuff could be moved, given its size, without anybody noticing it, or how it could be hidden in any way whatsoever.
Israel and Saudi Arabia are key Western allies. They're also Iran's most significant regional adversaries and believe the nuclear deal puts them in danger.
Let's look at the history and makeup of our so-called ally, Saudi Arabia.
Saudi Arabia, the birthplace of Islam, home to its holiest sites, the world's biggest supplier of oil, and to some US officials, the epicenter of Islamic terror. This is Abha. 15 of the 19 September 11 hijackers came from here in Saudi Arabia's rugged and conservative southwest. Saudi Arabia is dominated by men like these. They propagate a puritanical form of Islam known as Wahhabism. It controls much of the education system and social life, at times calling for jihad against a disbelieving West. 100 years ago, his family unified the nation with the backing of strict Wahhabi clerics. And they cut a deal. The royals would run politics and the economy. The clerics could dictate social policy. It's a deal many believe fostered Islamic extremism.
There have been several reports, the most recent of which was written at the request and for the United Nations, which document the fact that Saudis have, over the years, agreed to finance certain radical Islamic organizations on the silent condition that their operations and that their recruitment would be abroad and not at home.
The Saudi system produced bin Laden and his suicide fighters.
Well, there's no question that there has been a kind of virus that has spread throughout the Muslim world, a virus of ultra-Orthodox Puritanism. But there's also no question about what the source of this virus is, whether we're talking about Boko Haram or ISIS or Al-Qaeda or the Taliban. All of these have as their source a single sect, Wahhabism, the state religion of Saudi Arabia.
Now let's look at the history and makeup of our adversary, Iran.
It's been an open secret for decades, but for the first time now, the CIA has released documents that show its role in the 1953 coup. That is the coup that toppled Iran's democratically elected Prime Minister Mohammad Mossadegh.
In 1951, Prime Minister Mossadegh became Iran's first democratically elected leader. 8th of April 1953, Mohammad Mossadegh was overthrown by a mob paid by the CIA and loyal to the Shah. The CIA had successfully overthrown its first government.
An event that the Iranians still talk about 60 years later with surprising frequency.
The 1953 coup is very relevant to the U.S.-Iran relationship.
This has been absolutely critical to the Iranian government.
Many people don't realize that Iran was a democracy at one time.
And unfortunately, because of this coup that took place, sponsored by the CIA and the British Secret Service, this nascent democracy was basically crushed, and the Shah was reinstated, and he continued to reign the country with an iron fist.
Perhaps explains to some Americans, to some of us, why in the Middle East, in countries like Iran, some of the public opinion is so mixed and negative, really, when it comes to the U.S. We're still feeling the after effects of that coup, which was carried out at the height of...
Managed to go, spend about 10 days, and had an extraordinary, heartbreaking, inspiring, deeply confusing, but always amazing and interesting experience. I think people are going to be stunned by what they see, the disconnect between the Iran we see on the news, the Iran we deal with in a geopolitical way, and the Iran you experience walking down the street and meeting ordinary people.
Give me a slice of it walking down the street.
People are lovely and incredibly welcoming and happy to see Americans. There's a sense of a constant testing of limits. You can see on the ground in people's faces and movements, exploring what do they want to be, what kind of culture, what kind of country do they want to be, and they're fighting this battle in small ways and tiny micro expressions every minute, and it's an extraordinary thing to see.
How do the Iranians feel about us and their own government? A recent poll, a telephone poll conducted here in Iran by a Washington-based anti-terror group, revealed some surprising results. About 70% of the people who responded to that poll said they want normal relations and trade with the United States. Less than a third of the people who responded to the poll say they want their country to develop a nuclear weapon.
So what is it exactly, other than oil, that causes us to tilt towards Saudi Arabia, whose youth are being indoctrinated with Wahhabism, compared to the somewhat pro-American youth of Iran?